And it's Matt's mom cat.
Hi, and we're here. We're going to talk about Monsters Episode 5, The Hurt Man, also known as the most popular episode of the show.
Has
Also
it
known
been?
as the episode that has been forgiven above them all when it comes to the content of the show, as people celebrate the presentation of the show.
Well, he sure did a good job, didn't he?
So this is the famed 33-minute long unbroken confessional interview shot episode with Cooper Koch, who plays Erik Menendez, front and center, focused on for the entire length of this episode. Now, we got to be honest and we have to be fair. The length of this episode was half as long as the rest of them. But boy, did they make up for it in
I didn't
content.
notice that.
Right?
I didn't
Honestly.
even notice it.
So, we watch these two at a time as we cover them day by day here on 10th Floor Podcasts. And so when I watched this one, I was engaged and enthralled the entire time, pulled into this man's story as if I was Leslie herself. Which made the next episode seem particularly long because it was back to the regular runtime. And I'm like, boy, oh boy, do they have a lot to say about these parents. But we'll get into that in half an hour. First things first, we have to talk about Erik Menendez, Cooper Koch playing him. I have a lot of notes here, less about the content of it because it's all very intense content.
It is.
He details the ways in which he had an unfortunate relationship with his father. Detailed the ways that he got it worse than his brother Lyle.
Yeah, I thought about that early on. I thought about that early on before they really showed us. I thought, there's no way that they, of course, they're both treated horridly, but there's no way that the horridness would be even. No way.
Right.
One of them was his favorite victim.
And I guess it comes down to how they reacted to the approaches of Jose Menendez, because early on, Lyle essentially put his foot down. We talked about that in previous episodes. We saw that in previous episodes. He became a very angry person.
Very angry. And he put his foot down young, too. It's not like he was like, in his late teens and finally said, I had enough. No, he was like,
hey, Janet. 8. Hi, welcome to the show.
He was like 8 or 9.
Yes. And then Erik, though, didn't walk away with as much rage as his brother did. He was far more broken by it, according to the show, according to the depictions of these people on the show. And that's where we get into, some of the controversy of Monsters itself, is because this is about real life people who are still alive today.
They sure
who
are.
can respond today, who can set the record straight today. And as we've talked about in previous episodes, so check that out if you haven't seen them. They've taken some liberties when it comes to the depiction.
They had to have.
Yeah, I mean, it's dramatized for our entertainment, right? When it comes to this conversation that happened between Erik and the lawyer Leslie in real life, I have no idea what the content is. I have no idea how much of this they pulled from memoirs and biographies and articles and reflections that have come out over the years. Probably not very much, given the reaction to the show.
Is she still alive? The lawyer? Is the lawyer alive?
I believe she is. I
didn't look that up.
I didn't look that up.
But, even if it wasn't exactly as depicted with Erik, not what they showed us, these 33 minutes. This kind of information was shared with her.
Oh, yes, absolutely. 100%. It was shared with her. But, I mean, the line by line, the way that it was done, the euphemisms that were used. And that's something that I wrote down here, actually complimenting the show about, is because they spent 33 minutes, I wrote down here, 33 minutes on this, explaining this interview as if we were the lawyer. The way that it was shot, we never saw her face. We only saw her back. It was a wide shot up until the end where it slowly creeps in onto the face of Erik.
Right.
As he talks about himself being the hurt man.
The hurt man. Man, that was I just had so much empathy for him when he called himself the hurt man.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's exactly what the show is going for. I think that's what Cooper Koch wanted the audience to feel
Well,
in
he
his
sure looked,
portrayal.
his acting was superb. He sure looked wounded.
Yes, there is I wrote it down here. There is a innocence and an immaturity that
Hmm.
he brings out when he's talking about these things. And I think that goes hand in hand with what I've heard about people who have survived similar situations in the past, where it sometimes and somewhat locks certain people in that age in which it's happened.
Hmm.
And in
Hmm.
certain situations, it certainly looks like that's the case for this portrayal of Erik Menendez, trying to be
Right,
as fair to the real man as I possibly can while talking about it.
right, right.
But yeah, that's a note that I wrote down because you can as he's just talking, especially when they're talking about the stuff that happened when he was younger, as it was building up,
Hmm.
as it
Hmm.
was changing from one thing to another and becoming a
No,
third thing
and
entirely.
yeah, and it appears from what they showed us that Jose was, he was a textbook predator. He was a groomer. He groomed his own children.
Yeah, I mean there was a plan there. There was
Yeah,
absolutely
he groomed his
stages
own boys.
bringing up to, and then we get, in the next episode we get into motivations and reasons why and all of that, which will tear apart in the next episode that we go into. But we see the result of Jose and his choices, his action, his upbringing, and what sort of monster it ultimately turned him into. Janet says, I read this as an Emmy-worthy performance, and you read correctly, Janet. This is strong acting. When it comes to what Cooper Koch has brought in the previous episodes up until this one, I had been on the fence. I wasn't entirely convinced of the accolade that he had been receiving in reactions and on social media, and that's
Mhm.
because I haven't seen the entire thing.
Yeah, you hadn't seen episode 5 yet, huh?
Right. Like people, other reviewers who are talking about the show have had the benefit of time and being able to watch this entire thing and be able to talk about it as a whole, which we're going to do
Hmm.
at the very end. Once we're done talking about it episode by episode, we'll do a big retrospective and reflection on it all. But until then, I'm consuming this episode by episode, so I hadn't seen what they had been talking about until now, until this,
Right.
until the Erik Menendez that I got was Cooper's most practiced version,
Hmm.
most prepared version. There's no way that he didn't throw his entire self into this for 2 weeks before filming it.
Yeah.
With the focus, with the length of the monologues, with the fact that now I don't know if there's some sort of like fancy modern day technique in which they're able to seamlessly blend takes together, but from my viewership point of view, they sat them down and said action and hoped that they were able to get through 33 minutes unbroken.
Yeah. Well, didn't they go to, well, this might have been continuous anyway. Didn't they go to, well, it depends on where you're viewing it, how you're viewing it as well. I had interruption in his
Mm-hmm.
monologue.
Ah, okay. I didn't.
Yeah. Then as I was speaking, I remember, okay, not everybody has ads on Netflix like I do.
Ah, okay. So you got the
Yeah.
commercial in order. I didn't. I watched this commercial free. I have the benefit of that right now. We'll see how long I can keep that. But for right now, it's commercial free. So this was uninterrupted, and I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, this camera was wide shot fixated on him the entire time. We never even saw Leslie's face. We only ever saw the back of her head. We heard her
Yeah.
voice, and I have to
Yeah.
commend Ari Graynor as well because her lines were simple but impactful.
Yeah.
She had her own little monologue, little speech in there as well, reflecting on experiences that she had when she was
She
younger.
did. She absolutely did. She was told a story about being abandoned by her father.
Telling and basically at the end of that, trying to give Erik the permission to be mad at his dad for what he had
Right.
done, because Erik and Lyle, not in this episode because this was only Erik, but Lyle as well, both say, yeah, he did these things, but he was a great man, but
Mm-hmm.
he was our
Hmm.
father, but we still
Well,
love him.
I said this previously, but it seemed to me like they were really able to just split that off their life.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Kind of compartmentalize it into something else, much
Yes,
like
and
their dad
split
did.
it off their life. And I've heard that, individuals that have gone through this kind of abuse, they go into another place in their head
Mm-hmm.
until it's over
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
And that would departmentalize it too.
Oh, I think so
I
too.
think they just didn't allow, and it was very interesting too. It was very interesting. This family didn't talk about this stuff at all.
No, every time it was kind of brought up, Jose would shut it down immediately.
Yeah,
You know, we saw it in this, in not in this episode, because this was very much just what he did to me. But
yeah,
in the
yeah,
next one, we see time and time again it potentially coming up and then it getting stricken away by Jose as quickly as possible, or spun in a
yeah,
different direction, or he's the victim, or whatever. You know, we'll get into that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but all of that just allowed this to continue. Anybody that had any questions was just pushed away, and then
Uh-huh.
time and time and time again, hundreds of times, Leslie says.
Hundreds of times. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what I thought was very interesting too at the end of it, pretty much, he said that he now felt like he had permission to love his father. Since this isn't going on anymore,
Yeah.
now I can love him.
Right. You made me.
Wow. And you know what oddly made sense to me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's
You
twisted, but it
you
oddly
made
made
me
sense.
someone who doesn't do that. Is a
Yeah.
quote that I wrote down. Just. Well, I mean, we'll talk about it more in just a couple of minutes, folks, because this one's not going to be half an hour. It wasn't a full hour show. There's
Hmm.
really only so much to reflect and react to. But we're going to get into what all of that really means in the next breakdown, because we see who Jose was in a much more detailed fashion
Yes,
throughout.
yes. And you know, from they show us what he was at 16 all the way up until present,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know, day that he,
And we can see the complicated human being that he ultimately was, and how that affected his family. So, gosh, I mean, let's just give it the star rating now. This one's the 5 out of 5. I mean, when it comes to performance, when it comes to writing, I really wrote down right here lots of innuendo and encoded speech. Like, they did a great job of talking about heavy stuff while not using the heaviest of words every single time.
right. And I wonder with the Menendez voice, was that the case then?
Yeah, is that the language that they used with themselves and with
Is
each
that the
other?
language that was at hand?
Hmm. I don't know. We might have to read a Menendez book or something at this point, uh,
Right?
just to know what the real story is. That isn't the Netflix version.
I'm
Um,
sure they both written one. I would think they would have
I'm not
after
sure. I'm
all
not
these
sure what
years.
they have done, but I would imagine people surrounding them have definitely
Sure, I'm sure, I'm
taken
sure.
taken taken advantage of public interest. We'll say.
Hmm.
Um, this is what the Greeks did. Is something, you know, that was a justification that
Yeah.
Erik had mentioned, that his father had used, and we see a little bit more of that coming up in the next episode as well.
And you
Um,
know, and Erik mentioned that, you know, not only was he boxcarring him, but he was injuring him at the same time in
mhm.
different parts of his body.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know if he spoke up and said, "Hey, this is hurting me," like Lyle did. Would that have changed some? I don't know. I really can't say
I think
because,
Erik was just immobilized in fear mostly.
oh, for sure, for sure, for sure.
And
Another, yeah.
and Lyle was had that anger, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that rage that he probably helped him to a certain degree, that Erik didn't manifest that rage. I
Mm-mm.
mean, I'm sure he was damn mad. I mean, he must have been because he did wind up doing that with his brother. There was a lot of rage on that evening.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, just handing down the bucket of trauma.
Yeah.
Here's your ladle. Here's your ladle. Here's your ladle. Confusing
Mhm.
these people in such a way where it both manifests in hard to swallow ways, for an audience, for the public, for just people in general.
Oh, and I think Crazy Jose was probably convincing himself that he was actually toughening them up, like he
Oh yeah,
said, you know,
we'll get into that.
he
We'll
was
get into
making
that.
them warriors, he was making them soldiers.
Oh, we're
This was
100% going to get into
actually,
that.
yeah, but you
Well,
know, Erik said that in that episode as well.
yeah. I mean, this is what the Greeks did. It's
Yeah.
yeah. mm. It'd be very violent not to do so. It's
Yeah.
also something that I wrote down as well, you know.
Mhm.
Also, another line that I wrote down, because I got to commend the writing on this one. Like before, I'm like, yeah, you know, it's okay. But this one, they really brought it. They were really trying to win an Emmy with this episode. This was the
Mhm.
come watch this show episode of
Yeah.
Monsters. Um, because Leslie says, I'm blown away by you. And Erik responds, you shouldn't say that. And when you think about that, I'm blown away by you.
Mhm.
You shouldn't say that.
Oh,
You know, like
yeah.
just a interesting turn of phrase, an innocent turn of phrase, meaning nothing by it other than I'm impressed with your ability to speak honestly with me.
Mhm. Mhm.
But the way that it's phrased, like,
Well, at first, he didn't really want to say much at the very beginning,
mm.
but once he got going, it was like he couldn't stop
Yeah.
himself.
And once he got to the end, until he finally made the largest confession of all, that I'm, the hurt man. I'm the hurt man. Just, oh, so sad.
Yeah. So
Janet
sad.
says, with the success of Monsters, we know that Chavez will not be back on soaps. Well, we're going to talk about him here in just a couple of minutes because he was featured in the next episode, just not this one at all.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if down the line, though, we're going to get a Lyle-centric, Lyle-specific
Well,
episode. Maybe
I
some sort
thought,
of testimony. I don't know.
yeah, I don't know either. I don't know either because, even though the previous episode was more about Lyle, it wasn't filmed the same way. It wasn't
Yeah.
presented the same way.
Yeah, and it wasn't just only him. Yeah, I mean, he got his good solid half hour. Maybe
Hmm.
that's it. This one had this shorter runtime, and they just didn't tack on more at the end like
Well,
they did in
maybe,
Lyle's
huh?
episode. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. Again, this is the 5 out of 5, a good midpoint for this show, and we'll see how it continues. We'll see. We'll see what happens when they go to court. But first, folks, we got one more episode to cover in which we go back in time to learn about Kitty and Jose. So hang on to the channel, give it a couple of refreshes. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with a brand new video. Thanks for joining us on this one. This is a Monsters After Show. We just covered episode 5, The Hurt Man. We're in association with JLJ Media. If you want the audio version of this, search it out, JLJ Media After Shows. You can find them on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. You can hear our delicious, delectable voices. And
You don't
also
have to
find...
look at our faces to hear our voices.
No, you can take us on the road, work out with us, whatever it is that you want to do while we talk about monsters. And along the way, you can explore over 80 other programs offered by JLJ Media. So go ahead and do that. I've been Matt.
And that's Mom Cat.
And we'll see you for episode 6 of Monster. Don't dream it's over.